We imagine a moment that feels almost impossible even by the standards of General Hospital. Maxie wakes up. That alone is already a miracle, something that rewrites every fear, every goodbye, every unfinished sentence spoken at her bedside. But then comes the second miracle, the one that feels even more unreal. Nathan is alive. Not a memory, not a dream stitched together by grief, but a living man standing in front of her. We predict that Maxie's first reaction would be pure joy, the kind that takes her breath away, the kind that makes her believe, just for a moment, that fate has finally decided to give back what it once took so cruelly. In that instant, the world makes sense again. Her husband is alive. Her family is whole. James has his father. Everything she lost has somehow been restored. But we also believe that this happiness would not last untouched for long. Maxie is not a woman who lives on the surface of things. She has survived too much, loved too deeply, and lost too violently to accept miracles without question. Once the shock fades and the joy settles into something quieter, something more stable, Maxie would begin to see what others might miss. She would look at Nathan not just with love, but with memory. And memory, for Maxie, is sharp. She remembers the Nathan from 8 years ago. She remembers the man she shared a bed with, argued with, laughed with, and trusted with her heart and her child. She remembers his habits, his silences, the way he reacted under pressure, the way his eyes softened when he looked at James. That version of Nathan is etched into her in a way no DNA test could ever replicate. We predict that this is where the story truly begins. Because the Nathan who has returned is not exactly the Nathan who died. On paper, everything checks out. His fingerprints match. His DNA confirms his identity. The PCPD accepts him back. And soon enough, he is wearing the badge again, walking the same halls, carrying the same authority he once had. To the outside world, this is a perfect resurrection story. A fallen hero returns from the dead and resumes his place in both his family and his career. People want to believe it because believing feels good. It feels hopeful. It feels like justice. But we believe Maxie will feel the cracks before anyone else does. Not because she wants to doubt him, but because intimacy creates a kind of knowledge that science cannot measure. The man standing in front of her may look like Nathan, sound like Nathan, and even remember events from Nathan's life. Yet something about him feels off. It might start small. A hesitation in his voice when he talks about the past. A reaction that comes half a second too late. A choice of words that Nathan would never have used. These are not things others would notice or care about. But Maxie would. We think the contrast between the Nathan of the past and the Nathan of the present will slowly become impossible to ignore. 8 years ago, Nathan was deeply flawed, but his love for Maxie and James was never in question. He was protective, sometimes overly so. He worried constantly about keeping his family safe. He had a way of grounding Maxie when her emotions spiraled, not by controlling her, but by standing steady when she couldn't. This new Nathan, however, feels different, calmer in some ways, colder in others, more controlled, but less emotionally available. On the surface, he does all the right things. He smiles at James. He asks about Maxie's health. He says the words a husband should say. But Maxie senses that these actions feel practiced rather than instinctive. We predict that the idea of 2 miracles happening at once will also weigh heavily on her mind. Maxie waking up from a coma is already something doctors would struggle to explain. Nathan returning from the dead and reclaiming his life without legal or biological contradiction feels like pushing fate too far. General Hospital has always lived in that space where the impossible becomes possible. But even within that world, Maxie understands that not everything extraordinary is what it seems. Sometimes what looks like a miracle is actually a warning. As time goes on, we believe Maxie will start paying closer attention, not because she wants to expose Nathan, but because she wants to reassure herself. She wants to believe. She wants this reunion to be real. But the more she watches him, the more uneasy she becomes. One of the most painful realizations, we predict, will involve James. Nathan appears to care about his son, at least when others are watching. He plays the role of a devoted father in public. But Maxie may begin to notice subtle signs of distance when they are alone. Moments where Nathan seems uncomfortable with James's emotional needs. Times when he leaves James unattended longer than necessary. Small acts of neglect that don't rise to the level of cruelty, but still feel wrong to a mother who knows her child intimately. This is where Maxie's fear would start to grow. Not the kind of fear that screams, but the kind that whispers. The kind that tells her something is deeply wrong, but gives her no proof. She might question herself at first. Trauma can distort perception. Grief can create ghosts. She might wonder if she is projecting her fears onto a man who has been through unimaginable experiences. But the feeling does not go away. It sharpens. We predict that the storyline would push further into mystery when Maxie notices Nathan's absences. At first, they seem harmless. A work-related obligation, a late-night call, a routine that doesn't quite fit. Then patterns emerge. Every few months, at roughly the same interval, Nathan disappears for a short but specific window of time. He always has an explanation, but the explanations never quite satisfy. One night in particular stands out. A night when he leaves without warning, returns shaken, and refuses to talk about where he has been. Maxie does not confront him immediately. Instead, she watches. In our prediction, Maxie's intelligence and emotional awareness become her greatest weapons. She starts connecting dots. She considers possibilities that sound impossible even to her. What if the man she loves is alive, but only because something is sustaining him? What if there is a treatment, a drug, a procedure that keeps this body functioning? And what if that treatment is not meant for Nathan at all? We believe Maxie will eventually suspect the existence of a hidden laboratory, a secret place where Nathan goes to maintain whatever condition allows him to exist. This leads us to the most shocking theory, one that feels like science fiction but fits perfectly within the heightened reality of General Hospital. We predict that Nathan is not Nathan at all, that the body is Nathan's, confirmed by science, but the mind inside is someone else. Peter, a man who has always operated in shadows, who has used manipulation, technology, and moral ambiguity to survive. A man who would absolutely steal another person's life if it meant escaping death. From a purely scientific standpoint, this idea makes no sense. In the real world, consciousness cannot simply transfer from one body to another. Identity is not a file that can be uploaded or downloaded. We are not talking about spiritual possession or metaphysical explanations. We're talking about science, and science says this should be impossible. But General Hospital is not bound by the same rules as reality. It is a world where memory transfers, secret experiments, and medical miracles are part of the language of storytelling. Within that context, Peter using some clandestine medical process to inhabit Nathan's body becomes not just possible, but terrifyingly plausible. We believe Maxie will be the one to uncover the truth because she understands love, and she understands betrayal. If Peter is inside Nathan's body, there will be moments when his true nature slips through. A lack of empathy. A calculating response where there should be warmth. A sudden edge of cruelty disguised as indifference. Maxie may catch him watching James, not with a father's concern, but with detachment, as if the child is an obligation rather than a bond. The emotional weight of this realization would be devastating. Maxie would not just be facing the loss of Nathan all over again. She would be facing the horror that the man who once terrorized her life has returned wearing the face of the man she loved most. The betrayal cuts deeper because it violates both her grief and her hope. We predict that fear would replace doubt. Fear for herself. Fear for James. Fear that every tender moment since waking up has been a lie. This storyline, as we see it, would not rely on shock for shock's sake. It would be about identity, trust, and the limits of science and love. Maxie's journey would be the emotional core. She would have to decide when to act, who to trust, and how to protect her child without revealing her suspicions too soon. If Peter realizes she knows, the danger escalates instantly. We believe this plot would remind viewers that in General Hospital, even the most beautiful reunions can hide the darkest truths. What appears proven may still be false. What feels real may be carefully constructed. And sometimes, the person who knows you best is the only one who can see through the illusion. Maxie's love for Nathan would ultimately be the very thing that exposes the lie.